Do want to thank all of you for joining us for this Business Smart session. It's presented by Associa, British Columbia, and we are looking forward to hearing a bit more from Associa as Carla has joined us again, and we're pleased to have her with us. Before getting too far, though, I do want to acknowledge that today we are gathered on the traditional unceded ancestral territory of the Sea Okanagan people. We thank them for their rich history and culture. Today's session is about customer service and the experiences customers have with you. And in an age where we're being dominated and inundated with labor challenges and turning to opportunities with IT, how do you separate yourself in the marketplace in a highly competitive environment? One of the ways is excelling in developing strong customer experiences, loyal customers that will refer to you others. We're pleased to have Kirsten and Paul Moxness from Always Care Consulting. They'll be more formally introduced in just a moment. I also want to acknowledge our President Circle members. We love our members, all close to 1,000 of them, including our top PC members. Their investment in the Kelowna Chamber allows us to do this type of programming to help businesses succeed, help organizations succeed, and ultimately bring greater prosperity to the Kelowna region of our province. Also want to acknowledge, if you're looking for a great way to hold on to employees, consider the #1 group insurance plan in the country, Chamber Group Insurance. It's extended healthcare coverage for your employees, stable rates across the board. If you want to find out more about Chamber Group Insurance and how it can play a role in ensuring you retain talent going forward, give us a call at the Chamber, or you can contact our local broker of record, TD Benefits. Just a couple quick plugs before we more formally introduce our guest speakers. The Business Excellence Awards for 2022 now underway. Petroria Langford and Interior Savings are back as our presenting sponsors. Nominations are now open. You can check out more information on our website. 16 categories. Nominations open for a couple of weeks. Great way to pay it forward. If you have someone that's excelled at customer service and you want to promote their business, self-nominations are also permitted through this process. We have an independent panel of judging that will undertake all the judging of those nominations in the fall. But right now, you can go online and nominate your favorite business or organization in any of these 16 categories. Also to note, we're going to have a special Business Smarts coming up in September, about a month away on September 13th. We will be going behind the scenes at Rustic Reel. This will be an in-person event on site at Rustic Reel. If you want to find out more information and learn about what that program will be, contact the Chamber office. You can also check out the website. There is limited seating, so pre-registration is required for the participants, though I'm not sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. Not sure if they will do much sitting. They might be moving around and experiencing all the best of Rustic Reel. And speaking of making connections, Commerce Connects continues in September. We'll be at Ortho Quest on Richter. Great time to come out, network, make some connections, build some new customer base, and promote your brand at Commerce Connects. That's September 15th, 5 to 7 in person, presented by Canadian Western Bank. And if we have any nonprofits, or if you know any nonprofits that are trying to excel moving forward, a great way to focus on the future is by having a strong board of directors that understands the benefits of strong board governance practices. We have one of the best, Deb McClellan from Onboard Training, that is coming to Kelowna on September 24th. That's a Saturday from 9 until 2:30 at the Coast Capri, and pre-registration is required. You can do that on the Chamber website. This particular time, I'm going to turn my camera on and welcome Carla from Associa as well. Alberg, Carla, welcome, and thanks for coming back. I'm going to let you turn it over to you for a few words and introduction of our guests.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. Associate British Columbia is really pleased to be sponsoring this event. At Associate BC, we've been offering strata and property management services to the communities in the Okanagan and Lower Mainland for almost 40 years. Our mission is to bring positive impact and meaningful value to every one of our communities that we manage. Our company values of service, innovation, family, integrity, and loyalty are the principal guides that we help communities achieve their vision. At this time, I'd love to introduce our speakers for today, Kristen and Paul Maxness. Kristen and Paul own the Always Care Consulting Company and co-authored Spin the Bottle Service, Hospitality in the Age of AI, which was published by A How to Conquer last summer. Kristen is an entrepreneur that ran her own wellness business for 14 years in Copenhagen, Denmark, followed by 5 years in the spa at the most prestigious sports and members club in Brussels, Belgium. Paul grew up in Kelowna and had a 30-year basement to boardroom career at one of the world's leading hotel companies. Kristen and Paul started the Always Care Consulting Company after moving to Kelowna in 2018. Welcome, Kristen and Paul. We're really looking forward to what you're going to share with us today.
Thanks, Carla. And Paul and Kirsten, we should explain too, because you, how did they have that logo of the Kelowna Chamber? We give that out to every member, by the way, but no, not true. They're actually in our boardroom, so we're kind of coordinating this from our end. We want to thank Paul and Kirsten from coming almost in studio, so we're being flexible here today. And Carla, thanks for joining us as well and doing that introduction. Paul, turn things over to you and Kirsten.
Well, thanks, Carla and Dan, and thanks to the Chamber for allowing us to be here. Because where we are located, it's pretty noisy outside, so we really appreciate the opportunity to come down here and present from here instead. And thanks, Carla, also for that introduction, and to Associa for sponsoring these events, because events don't happen without sponsors, right?
And it was so great to see so many Chamber members at the event last week. We're excited to be here and appreciate everyone who's logging in during lunch to follow along. Please put comments and questions in the chat along the way.
Yeah, so here's a bit of an overview of a few things we'll touch on today. Now, we don't pretend to have like the secret recipe for customer service. We simply think that recipes and cookie cutters belong in the kitchen. And in some circles, I'm known as the guy that got rid of what people thought was the most important manual at one of the world's largest hotel companies. But nobody reads manuals, do they? So at Radisson, we got rid of our security manual with a formula that could be applied anywhere. And we did that about 20 years ago. And I find that customer service is similar. It's time to ditch the scripts. And the reason I say that is that customer service is all about people, and people, both customers and those that provide the service for them, are extremely diverse. There is no one-size-fits-all way of doing things. So today's session is not going to be a lot of how to do this or just do that and you'll be successful. Kirsten and I are going to have a chat about some of the experiences that we had during our many years of working in hospitality and traveling the world, and experiences that helped Kirsten become a pioneer in the world of wellness in Copenhagen and a sought-after practitioner at that exclusive members club in Brussels, and experiences that led me to my 30-year career. And all those experiences put together showed us how important customer service really is. And so in between the bites of your lunch, we hope that you'll chime in with your own thoughts and stories along the way, or ask questions. Now, we didn't start out to write a book or develop workshops to help people discover how hospitality and service can be a super fun and fulfilling and long career, but that's where we ended up, right? So, hey, Kirsten, remember the start of the pandemic?
Oh, yes, I remember. Just before the pandemic broke out, we celebrated our daughter's 30th birthday in Rotterdam. With family in the Netherlands and other visiting from Denmark and Czech Republic, it was a family reunion. Little did we know we will not see anyone again for a long time. After years of travel, we were stuck at home.
Yeah, but we still had our memories, right?
Oh yes, we spent a lot of evenings looking at pictures and listening to music from around the world.
And wine. I remember there was wine because my birthday's in late March, and in 2020, we kind of planned a big party, but that had to be canceled when the restrictions came into effect in mid-March there. But lucky for us, we'd already bought the wine.
Yes, and that was wine. But our pictures and our memories made us realize something, didn't they?
Yeah, it dawned on us that it wasn't the fanciest hotel suites or the first-class airline lounges or sitting at the front of the plane sipping champagne that we remember best.
It was the places where people have taken the best care of us and provided great personal service that stuck out.
Places like the Art Hotel in Rotterdam, we always stay there when we go to visit our daughter and her fiancé. And like many of the places that we remember best, it's not fancy and not too expensive. The bar restaurant is actually just a simple pizza place, but the staff really takes care of people. When we were able to go to Rotterdam last September, the restaurant owners who'd suffered through crippling lockdowns, they had horrible lockdowns in the Netherlands. They actually cheered up when they recognized us and saw that some of their regulars were finally coming back. And it's just those kind of memories, they just stick with you.
Uh-oh, I remember this picture, but I'm not telling what we were talking about.
Well, you don't need to tell me because it was hotels. With Mr. Ritter, it was always hotels. He was a legendary hotelier, and I was fortunate enough that for 20 years, he was the CEO at the company that I worked for. And on the screen is one of his favorite quotes. And I still believe that working in hospitality and customer service can be the most fun and rewarding career that you can have. Sometimes people say, but you know, I want a real job. I want to be an accountant, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an engineer. And throughout my career, even my own mom used to keep wondering when I was going to get a real job. Newsflash, folks, hotel companies need accountants, they need lawyers, and they need engineers. And great customer service helps people in almost any profession. I mean, look at me. I started out as a simple hotel security guard, right? But my career was unbelievably awesome and rewarding. I mean, I've met kings and queens and presidents. I've spoken at meetings in the UK Parliament, the US State Department, the UN headquarters in New York. I mean, what other career gives you those kind of opportunities, right? And when our daughter was a teenager, I used to tell her, if you want to meet those pop stars that you got pictures all over your wall of, or those famous actors and stuff, you got two choices. You can stand in the rain outside their hotel, or you can get a job in hospitality. So she got a job in childcare. But today, I'm probably even more passionate about hospitality and security than I ever was. And change is coming too. Nowadays, service, I think, will become a key driver, no matter which industry we're in. Remember, Kirsten, who our first client was?
Oh, yes, I do. And I remember how scary it was that our first client was a technology company. It was Bose. What do we know about speakers, headphones, and sound systems?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is a slide from the Leadership Connect session that we did for them. And although they were closing most of their retail stores, they still wanted to focus more on customer service, internal service and external service. And so we talked with them about a world that's becoming increasingly automated, where soon enough our supermarket app is going to talk to our fridge app, and it's going to order our food and schedule delivery. And we're hoping that it's going to talk to the wine store app too, and make sure that the right bottle is available on our stay-at-home steak night date nights. And we had a great discussion with the team at Bose about how all this is going to impact customer service and why people will still be the real difference makers.
Maybe it was because we didn't understand everything in Brussels, Belgium. But when we moved here to Kelowna, I noticed that people said the same things to me every time I went shopping or we went to a restaurant. Is this your first time here? How are the food spiced? Got any plans for the rest of the evening? Most of the time, they didn't seem to listen to my answer. It was like they were robots. I think it because it must be so boring for them to say the same thing all day long to everyone they meet.
Yeah, and you still complain about that every time you come home from shopping or when you've been out for a drink with your friends. And then we saw the CEO of a global hotel group say that the silver lining of the pandemic was that it was going to speed up their digitalization process. And soon enough, people would be able to do almost anything without having to physically interact with his staff. He said you'll be able to search online, book online, check in online, your phone will be your room key, you'll be able to order and do whatever you want online. You can review your bill, pay your bill, and check out online, and you'll only need to have minimal contact with our staff. And then he said the thing that really upset me, and it's what they always used to use against me, is it was in the interest of safety. He said, and I'm thinking, the CEO of a global hotel company is saying that for safety reasons, they're not going to have too much interaction with staff because that could be hazardous to your health. I mean, what kind of hospitality is that?
I remember that upset you very much. Our best experience were always related to human interactions. So we knew that he was off track.
Yeah, we knew he was off track, all right. And his view of digitalization, coupled with those repeatedly robotically recited scripts that you're always complaining about, made it no surprise to us that people didn't want careers in hospitality anymore or customer service. I mean, in a world of social media storytellers and influencers, taking that opportunity away by forcing them to behave like robots is a great way to take all the fun out of working in hospitality and customer service.
And that's not the only problem though, isn't it?
It certainly isn't, because the labor shortage isn't new. When early in the 2000s, Radisson Hotel Group, our HR team was already looking at the coming challenges just due to demographics. And turnover has been a huge issue, especially in the US, since probably about 2010. By 2016, it was over 70%. And in Canada, the changing demographics have seen the rate of the working age population in seniors continue to drop. This is just all one big challenge waiting to happen. By 1996, or in 1996, the ratio of younger workers to older workers, so people between 25 and 34, there was 3 times more of them than there were of workers that were over 55. But by 2018, that had evened out. It was 1-to-1.
In other words, the labor challenge was already underway, and the pandemic just speeds things up. It's on the news almost every day.
Yeah, and that's why we love this quote by our friend Jim Taylor. Not only is retention cool now, but today it's also really, really necessary.
Think about when you've been totally impressed by customer service, or even when you provide great service that made someone stay. You can share them in the chat, share what made that experience special, and tell us how it made you feel. I remember when we did the session for Bose, one of the participants said she just came from Trader Joe's that morning, and while standing in line, she noticed that someone dropped a wrapped bouquet of flowers. She picked them up and handed them back to the customer that had dropped them. One of the Trader Joe's employees came to her and said, "Thank you. That's real Trader Joe's spirit. You fit right in if you worked here." She said that comment made her day. It made her feel twice as good about the simple little act of kindness, and it made her feel even more loyal towards Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I remember that story too. And it got a lot of positive comments from the other participants. But one of the most important things is the lady that told it. She said it had made her feel really good doing that little act of kindness. And then having that amplified by Trader Joe's actually coming and thanking her just made her day even more. She was just really raring to go when we were going to talk about service. And everyone has experienced great guest service. And despite what it might look like, if you're reading like social media pages like Kirsten does, called, rant and rave, where people are complaining about stuff, people actually really do feel good when they share positive experiences like that with others. And one of the best experiences we heard about when we did our first in-person session of spin the bottle service workshops for prestige hotels was from a guy that had started his career as a beach photographer in Cancun. And everyone in the room, when he told his story, everyone was totally moved by it. And afterwards, he told us that sharing the story with the group had helped him remember why he'd actually got into hospitality in the first place. We changed people's lives for the better, he said. And I'm pretty sure it changed the way a lot of his colleagues looked at him that when he told it. Suddenly he was more than just a cashier at their liquor store. He was more than that to them. He was more than that to us. And I think he was even more than that to himself.
Exactly. He changed a family's life just by taking their pictures. But let's get back to where Spin the Bottle service comes from.
Yeah, let's do that. So remember when we moved to Brussels in 2007 and we met Serge? He was a manager at a little brasserie close by where we lived. And Littleville was like, it was a really simple little place, but pretty much, we were in a residential neighborhood, so off the tourist track, but it was usually full of regulars. And we enjoyed many an evening there too. And Serge was like a total pro. It showed in everything that he did. And the title of our book is actually dedicated to the way that he poured beer, because in Belgium, they take their beer pretty seriously. And every beer has its own special glass, and great servers, they just care a great deal about the way they pour those great Belgian beers. Always a clean glass, always the glass that beer is made for. And when he placed the bottle on the table after pouring our beer, Serge would always give it a little twist of the wrist to make sure that the label was facing the person that he poured the beer for. So we like to say that we discovered that on an evening that we had more than one beer. Not totally sure we remember exactly which evening it might have been, but every time Serge came to our table with beer, he had clean glasses, unopened bottles, and he poured them with the same care and attention and that same twist of the wrist. And in his role as manager, Serge was the one that actually led the troops and ensured that service was always excellent. But when he moved on, service slipped, and many of the regulars actually stopped going there, including us. And unfortunately, that place didn't survive the pandemic.
No, Serge was amazing. Remember when he said to us, when you said to us when we found him managing a different brasserie and we asked him where he had been?
Yeah, when we asked him where he'd been, his first thing he said was, "I've been right here waiting for you." And we celebrated, as you can see, with an extra large beer that night. And Serge worked his magic there too. And he used service to transform that new place. And we became regulars there. And we could see it, that it was becoming more and more popular. It was packed almost every single night. So Serge was a difference maker. And we named our book after how he poured beer.
Have you met someone like Serge that provides service so good that you return time and time again? Why do you think there aren't more people like Serge in bars and restaurants today? Think of your favorite places to shop or eat out. Why are they your favorites? What makes you like going back there? Share them in the chat.
But Spin the Bottle service is not about pouring beer. It's actually about caring.
Yes, it's caring about your customer and your colleagues, caring about the product you serve, and caring about the place you work. Caring cannot be automated. Automation can help companies pretend to care, but customers will easily see through it. It is not genuine.
Oh, yes, they will. Remember when places started to reopen during the pandemic and a chain restaurant sent us an email saying, "Oh, we missed you. Oh, we're reopening in Kelowna. Oh, please come back. We've really missed you. We want to see you again."
Well, we went there. The entire staff was new and no one recognized us.
Yeah, our server even told us that he was only going to be there until he could get a better job downtown. And we sent the manager a note afterwards, but we didn't receive any response. So despite the well-worded email from their corporate CRM team, no one at the restaurant itself had missed us. But they might miss us now because we don't go there anymore. So think about your own marketing. How authentic is it? How do your employees feel about it? Are you portraying their world accurately? Are you making promises that they're going to have a hard time keeping? Are they empowered to make your marketing a reality when a customer comes through the door?
Like search, every employee can make a difference, but no employee can do it alone. The places where Serge worked wouldn't have been the same if the food wasn't any good, or if he and his colleagues didn't get along.
I like to say that if you really want to go places, every cog in the wheel is important. Great service takes great teamwork. And there's an old saying, and I think it comes from real estate, but we use it a lot in hospitality too. We say that the 3 keys to success are location, location, location. But we actually disagree a little bit because we believe that great teams and great service can overcome even the most challenging locations. And one of the stories in our book is from this resort that's on the screen now. It's in South Africa. And it's got no beach, it's got no big game, it's got no entertainment, no shopping, and it's so far out of the way that they actually ask you to phone ahead from a town that's about an hour's drive away before you arrive, because there's no cell phone coverage between that town and the resort. And so if it takes you more than like 90 minutes to get there, they'll come looking for you because you might have gotten lost or your car might have broken down. But with all that going against it, Bushman's Clough is still consistently rated amongst the #1 resorts in the world. And I mean, we were totally blown away by the time that we stayed there. And their service was all about teamwork.
Yes, teamwork is so important. Would you believe that when my birthday was doing a business trip for Paul's company in Las Vegas, he took me to this ugly mall to celebrate. It was 10 miles away from downtown. The taxi driver could hardly find it. Half the stores were closed or out of business. When we walked through the door, we found ourselves in a crowded cowboy bar. Would you also believe it was one of the best restaurants we ever been to?
Hey, I'm a security guy, right? So I conducted a thorough investigation beforehand. Every website I checked, from OpenTable to TripAdvisor to Las Vegas Tourism Bureau, Las Vegas newspapers, everyone said, if you want to go out for a romantic evening, go there. And still, I will admit that I was more than a bit concerned when we saw those big backsides hanging off the bar stools in that dingy place. But a hostess saw us right away, grabbed us and led us through the bar to a dining room. And in there was a completely different atmosphere. Really hard to believe it was the same place. And every staff member we met that evening smiled and said happy birthday to Kirsten, because they'd been informed of the note that I put onto the reservation in OpenTable. And not a whole lot of restaurants always do that. The server didn't even want to choose wine for our dinner. He said, no, it's a special occasion. I'm going to go get the sommelier. And when the sommelier came, he says, happy birthday. He knew why we were there. He knew what food we'd ordered. He knew where we came from. And he said, I'm going to use all this information with the preferences that I ask you about to choose your wine. The communication and collaboration in that place was just unbelievable. And as an example of their teamwork, when clearing plates from a neighboring table of about 10 people, somebody asked the server a question. So when he bent down to answer the question, he took his hand with the plates and he kind of just slipped it behind his back. And just kind of out of the blue, another server comes by, takes the plates from him and continues clearing the table almost without interruption. I don't even think hardly anybody else at that table saw what had actually happened. And that handoff was so seamless that we call that the Rosemary Statue of Liberty play, because Rosemary's restaurant was just amazing. They didn't have a famous chef. They obviously had a lousy location. They didn't have a brand, but it was still rated amongst the best restaurants in a city that has unbelievable numbers of great restaurants right downtown in the casinos on the Strip.
So, like we said, great teamwork beats bad location and other challenges. And just like great service, great teams are also built on caring. How well do your teams know each other? And how well do they know what working together is the best way to complete?
So here's a few tips and takeaways about teams. And, great teams are prepared. So like the team at Rosemary's Restaurant, everyone knew what the occasion was and where we came from. They'd read it in the booking on Open Table. They trusted each other's capabilities. So the server knew that the sommelier would take super good care of us and not ruin our evening. That they support each other. So nobody was thinking, well, that's not my table, I'm not going to clear those plates. The Statue of Liberty play worked perfectly because they supported each other. So think about your own teams. What do you do to encourage and help them to develop great teamwork? And how do you encourage them to work together so that you can compete against the competition instead of everybody kind of competing internally? So remember to ask any questions or post comments in the chat, and Dan's going to help us go through that a little bit later. And if there's more than we have time for, we'll follow it up individually with you. And in our eyes, great service starts before a guest or customer arrives. And obviously it's part of the experience while they're there, but it also continues afterwards, doesn't it, Kirsten?
Oh, yes, it does. How do you feel about the surveys you get after every visit to a hotel or a restaurant, or after every time you rent a car? Do you ever notice that although your feedback is so important, the surveys usually comes from email addresses you can't reply to? Do you think the surveys want your feedback, or do they want more data?
So yeah, I used to run, in the early days, I ran the loyalty program at the European part. It was before we were part of Radisson, but I know why they want the data. And so if you do answer those things, how often do you actually get a truly personal response, right? Not just a standard pre-written form with a couple of cliches like we're going to follow up with the team and blah, 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 but an answer that tells you that it's really personal and that the person that wrote it actually cares. Companies claim that they use your feedback to provide you with a better experience, but do you ever notice that your experiences change from time to time based on some of the feedback that you've provided them? When we lived in Europe, we used to fly into YVR quite often and rent a car at Hertz because we drive over here to visit my parents. And amazingly, every time we filled out the post-rental survey, the manager there wrote us a personal email. And over the years, we felt like we were really getting to know Ed. We knew that he loved to travel. His favorite city was Istanbul. And to this day, we've never met the guy. And the last time we rented there was Christmas 2017. And I put a note in the reservation asking for a car with proper winter tires because we were coming over the Coquihalla, and we all know what that can be like in the winter. And it was our last holiday before we moved here. And when we picked up the car, not only did it have proper winter tires, but Ed had placed a Christmas card on the steering wheel with a handwritten greeting inside, and it was signed by most of the employees at the Hertz YVR outlet. Now, he prioritized feedback and follow-up, and with the volume of business they were doing in those days, like this is pre-pandemic, right up to Christmas, if he can do it, anyone can.
Compelling customer service is all about people, but we still see huge value in digitalization, right, Paul?
We sure do. And, we might be boomers. We know we're boomers, and we make no apologies for that. But we certainly know that automation can be used to enhance service. It's important that when planning digital enhancements, though, that you think long and hard about how they'll impact the personal experience, both for guests and for your staff. Are you simply trying to make things easier for you, or are you trying to make things better for them? Doing an in-depth analysis of the entire circle of impact can save you so much headache down the road. In security, we used to have a saying, or we still have it actually, that emphasizes the importance of doing proper analysis. We used to say, we still say it, don't be driven by fear or vendors, be driven by threat. And in a customer service setting, we can kind of adapt that to say something like, don't be driven by slick salespeople peddling the latest gadgets or wanting you to join the latest trend. be driven by what actually improves the experiences of your staff and your customers. Our favorite hotel in Washington, D.C. is called the River Inn. And we used to stay there for at least a week every November from 2008 to 2018. I used to go to some meetings at the State Department that week. And the last person to check us in there, the guy that checked us in 2018, he was probably only in about grade 3 when we went there the first time. And when we checked in 2018, he looked like he just graduated high school. But he welcomed us and said, wow, you guys have been staying here for 11 years. So their guest history, they use technology as his memory. And that's what told him that we'd been staying at that hotel every year since he was a little kid. Now that hotel is not a big hotel. It's not a fancy hotel. It doesn't have lots of shiny chandeliers and stuff, but it's a place that makes you feel incredibly welcome. And the way that they do it is that they use technology behind the scenes to remember you, to personalize things for you, even though that the person behind the desk changes from year to year.
Yes, we really enjoyed every stay we had there. Computers can be programmed to do a lot of great things. They can even be programmed to say, we miss you, or we're thinking of you on your birthday, or thank you. But when a computer says thank you, that's not genuine. Only people can do that.
Yeah, automation and standardization have added a lot of good things to customer service. Quality control on everything from food safety to product consistency. I mean, these days, it's even rare to get a flat pack from IKEA with missing pieces. But trust us, if you bought anything from those guys in the 70s, you expected missing pieces. It was horrible. But in customer service, however, if you apply too much standardization to the way we allow people to behave, they'll become bored. They'll start to look for workarounds, or even worse, they'll look for jobs at places that allow them to behave more like people and less like robots. So even worse, that will lead to your customers being bored. And people were kind of weird because we like everything to be perfect every time. But if the way people treat us and talk to us becomes too scripted and too predictable, that will make it a lot harder to create the kind of atmosphere that's so easy to put into an Instagram story, but so hard to recreate in real life. And at the end of the day, we all live in the real world. That's where our experiences and our memories are created. And that's just such an important thing to keep in mind when you're creating your guest and customer service programs.
When we were developing our workshops, a 3-star hotel in Manila and a 5-star deluxe hotel in Shanghai were our pilots. We had a very interesting discussion with the Manila team before we started, didn't we, Paul?
Yeah, that was fun. And of course, like everything else in 2021, it took place on Zoom. I mean, we're still doing Zoom in 2022, right? And there's a 15-hour time difference too between Kelowna and Manila. So it was probably 8 or 9 in the evening at our place and lunchtime for them. And the general manager there, he's a boomer like us and a former colleague of mine at Radisson. And he wanted to keep his strict service standards on everything, including what words to use and how and when to say them to every guest in every guest-facing situation. And actually, back when I started out in the late 80s, we called that total quality management. And we were really proud of the fact that every hotel in the chain in every country in the world answered the phone and greeted the guests exactly the same way every single time. But by the time I left Radisson after 30 years, after traveling so much for all those years, I was so bored. It was worse than boring to listen to that same recital every single time I phoned or checked into a hotel. Even worse, it seemed like every other hotel business and customer service business in the world was also stuck in that same rut. And so at one point during our call with the general manager in Manila and his HR manager and training manager who were on the line with us, they had quite a hefty discussion. I mean, it was entertaining. We should have had popcorn, but we just kind of sat back and listened to it. And I was impressed that the HR and training manager felt confident and comfortable enough to go against their boss in front of us. But he was adamant that, you know, without his strict protocols and procedures, their service consistency would suffer. So he was skeptical, and I think he's probably a bit fearful of spin the bottle service. But the kids on his team, they disagreed, and they just completely disagreed, didn't they, Kirsten?
Oh, yes. They told him how bored the staff was because they couldn't use their own customer service skills. Trust us, they said, and trust the staff. They want to give great service. He trusted them, and they did the pilot. After the first session, they told us that it had lasted 3 hours instead of 1 because people were so engaged. They said they'd never seen the team so excited before.
Yeah, and lucky for them, Manila was in lockdown, so they could go 3 hours instead of 1 because they didn't have a whole lot of guests there, and they were basically just running takeout from their restaurant. But, you know, quality and doing things properly are extremely important. We just believe that standardization has taken too much trust and empowerment away. I mean, just recently we stayed at a hotel where we after we checked in, we asked if we could see a meeting room. It was in the evening. All the meeting rooms were locked. And the people on duty said, we'll have to phone the general manager to see if we're allowed to open one of the rooms for you. So too often, you know, a simple solution is made difficult because people aren't trusted or empowered to make their own decisions.
Maybe this can seem scary. What would happen if we just allowed employees to do what they thought was best? Would everything fall apart if we didn't have every little controlling policy and procedure in place?
But when it comes to people, we believe that frameworks are better than strict scripts because nobody actually takes a job believing that they're going to become a horrible employee. Most people actually want to be good employees. They want to be good employees because they believe it'll give them the opportunities to be recognized and developed and rewarded and promoted. They want to be as happy as the people in the recruitment ads, right? And so they want to be part of that happy culture. Sure, they're going to make mistakes, but good guidance and support gives them confidence in their abilities. And over time, that will help them. And the closer that the culture is to what we say it is, the better the chance that they'll stay loyal and become experienced enough to show your customers how much they actually care about creating the customer culture that your marketing says that you have. So trust and empowerment are keys to building and reinforcing the sense of belonging and loyalty in staff. So here's a recent example from Delta Airlines that we read on LinkedIn. And the person that posted it, Lauren Fernandez, is a restaurant investor, and she had to postpone and then later cancel a trip because her kid got sick. And she was surprised that when she phoned to first postpone the flight, real people, Delta employees, answered her calls after a few rings, and they just allowed her to postpone and then later cancel at no charge. So imagine that, the phone is answered by people. The employee said, yeah, no problem. And they waived the fees without doubting the customer or citing the fine print in the flight reservation contract or even asking for doctor's notes to prove that her kid was really sick. And Delta probably lost maybe a couple of $100 in fees, but the customer is going to remain loyal. And she's going to tell all of her friends, and they're on LinkedIn, she got a lot of them. They're all going to tell all their friends, just like we're telling you guys today. And so Delta gets a whole bunch of free advertising, and probably we all like Delta a little bit more now than we did before we read that story.
These lessons aren't new. Paul Stadt recently told us he attended a business seminar in Vancouver in the 70s called "Boss is a 4-letter word." The key message to all the business leaders at that seminar was that to succeed, you must make boring tasks exciting and interesting to your staff. Or like Mr. Ritter said, work needs to be fun and rewarding.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Mr. Ritter was at that conference in Vancouver too. But no, if work isn't fun and rewarding, if you force people to strictly follow a script and tell them what they can say and how they should say it and when they can say it and who they should say it to, it's so easy to understand why people feel stifled and frustrated and why they start looking for jobs elsewhere. But when they're confident that they're trusted and empowered, they're more likely to show how much they care. And when they're able to do that, their jobs become more meaningful to them and more fun for them. The service they provide will become more memorable. So they'll want to stay in their jobs and your customers will want to come back.
At the end of the day, caring is what great customer service is all about. Caring about people, caring about your product, and caring about yourself.
So we love this quote by the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore. And I'll read it out. He said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." Now that can seem a little bit strange in our culture where we value equality, but providing excellent service really does bring joy to those that provide it. I mean, trust me, if this wasn't true, there's no way I would have lasted 30 years working in security for a hotel company.
We'll look at the comments and questions in a moment. Thanks for joining us today, and please reach out if you'd like to connect with us. We love the opportunity to discuss the future of guest and customer service with you. Our website is on the slide, but you can easily find us both on LinkedIn or Instagram. And a recording of this session will also be uploaded to the Chamber YouTube channel.
So thanks, everyone. Dan, it's over to you now. Are there any interesting stories or challenging questions or comments in the chat?
We're asking for some, so hopefully we'll get that shortly. We do have a bit of time, but first, before getting too far, thanks for the presentation. We will ensure that the slide deck gets sent out to all those that are registered here. And if others want that, they can contact the Chamber office. And I certainly I was trying to quickly transcribe that last quote because it's an excellent quote, so inspiring on that. So we will open it up to any questions if folks want to use the Q&A function or the chat for any questions. We'll go. We have about 10 minutes here, so we'll go a little bit to the top of the hour, and so that we'll be able to do that for the next little bit here. But I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit about the work that you've been doing. Has it been solely focused on the hospitality side?
Well, that's what we thought it was going to be. But as we mentioned in the presentation, the first company that reached out to us was the corporate headquarters at Bose. And that was kind of a shock because they're not in our eyes, they weren't like our target market, right? But they had this Leadership Connects, they called it, where they had fast-tracked some people coming up through Bose that they kind of were tapping as the next generation of leaders. And they felt that they needed to learn more about customer experience. They needed to learn more about caring and empathy because they knew too much about numbers and too little about people. Mm-hmm. And so that was our first client. And then since then, we've also had companies that focus solely on sales. One out in Vancouver where the guy said every salesperson should read this because in sales, they learn all about closing the sales, but not enough about building relationships. And we've also had, we're just waiting for some feedback now from a very high profile company in California that is looking at introducing it as training for their security personnel, because security personnel are now being placed in more front guest-facing situations in their offices and their other properties. And so they feel that this is a good way to build some hospitality and caring into the security personnel that they have, because they have a lot of high-profile, well-known people visiting their properties, and they need to train the security staff on how to behave and how to speak to them. And basically, we agree with them that all they have to do is let the people be people.
I'm curious, you talked about automation and how that affects, particularly on the tourism and hospitality side, when the labor challenges are so significant and people are moving through, it seems, an organization fairly quick. Struck me authentic, genuine, when you reference trust. Many have responded in that marketplace because they have such a high turnover that they give a lot of structure because they don't have time, they say, to build that trust and empowerment. But are you saying that they need to stop and reflect, that start first with the trust and empowerment?
Yeah, they have to certainly find a balance there, because the McDonald's model doesn't work anymore, right? Where there's just not enough kids coming out of high school to populate all the McDonald's and Starbucks and Tim Hortons and everything that's out there. So everybody's going to start struggling. And so that's kind of my new mission in life now, is that I want to help people choose hospitality as a career. And help businesses understand the value of being able to retain the best people. And I don't really think it's like an either or question. You can do both. And we're not just saying, hey, just let them loose, right? That you need a good framework, you need some kind of follow-up and things with people, but you don't need to tell them exactly what words to say, when to say it, and how to do it. There's been, and even when at Radisson, I mean, there's so much focus on taking things away without people seeing that it's getting taken away. Like we'll replace it with technology, but I think we're using technology, a lot of spaces, we're using it wrong. We're using it to replace people instead of using it like the hotel that we mentioned that uses it to help people, right? So they don't have very many staff in that hotel, but the technology that they have at their hand is programmed so that it helps them actually create that experience that they want to create.
Yeah, let's take that a little bit further, because we do have a question, and it kind of builds on that theme of where you were there. And the question is, what is the best way to utilize automation in customer service while still keeping the personalization? So is it about finding that balance and understanding if you go too far in automation, you lose that contact point that allows you to kind of wow your customer? Or is it a reflection that people need to do in designing their business practices, that there are times to utilize automation, but don't lose sight of the benefits of that personalization?
Yeah, be careful about, I think a lot of automation especially, well, probably everywhere, but a lot of it has been introduced because we've looked at employees as being a cost, right? We haven't looked enough at the benefit side of having good employees. We've just looked at cost this much money. We can buy this machine and take this many people away, right? But what happens is the machines, they can't think like people, they can't care like people. And so you end up with a totally standardized product, right? Where you get the automated email that comes back. First you get the survey, then you get the automated email that comes back. And people just really don't care. And I think we're going to get into a place now where people are going to look at those surveys and say, well, what's in it for me?
Yes.
Why should I give you all my data and do all that kind of stuff? So we have to remember what we're actually in business for, and it's not collecting data, it's taking care of people's,
Giving them an experience, right?
giving them experiences and all that. So there has to be a balance there. And I mean, it can be done if you have good technology, and I'm guessing that, I don't know them all that well, but I'm guessing that Hertz has really good technology behind the scenes that runs their survey programs and all that. But if the manager at an outlet that's as busy as the one at YVR used to be, if he can write personalized emails, he's doing it because the system is helping him do other stuff, right? At Radisson headquarters, I think one of the biggest pet peeves of our hotels was that they had to send so many reports into corporate. And in security, we didn't have any reports unless something was like really bad, they had to report it, but we didn't have reports for report's sake. What we tried to do was design systems and technology that helped the hotels, but that could also give us access to the information we needed. So we didn't need them to extract a report and put it in a system and send it off to us. We could see it if we wanted to see it. And so thinking more about what your role actually is in supporting your people so they can take care of your guests, instead of just trying to replace people. I think that's kind of a mental shift that has to take place in some circles.
Yeah, I've had some interesting customer service experiences. I'm going to share one. I know time goes short here because it was just recent, and it came on the financial side and dealing with banks and I think that's where I find it most fascinating. When you get to almost a commodity basis where there is no separation between. So what separates one brand from another? And the experience when we went into this financial institution and it was on a weekend and the branch manager was there. The door was open. The branch manager came out, was clearly supporting the team, was friendly. So it evoked that caring principle that you talk about in the book. And it just left us in so positive. Well, we actually still have an organization that not everything is automated. They still caring people. And that made such a strong resonance in my sense. And we were in there with a few folks of how strong that financial institution was because they had caring people. That differentiated them in the marketplace that seems to be so bent on automation side. So one last plug for you, if you could, if people want to get in touch, can they get information through the website? Do you have your book available that people can find that out? So if you want to just wrap things up there, Paul and Kirsten, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. The book's on Amazon, Spin the Bottle Service. Yeah, our website is always care.ca. People can find us on LinkedIn and Instagram. We're pretty easy to find. And we're open and ready to connect.
For sure.
Awesome.
And we'll be next month
Yeah.
too. For sure. We've already marked September 15th in the calendar. So
yes. And so that's the members can connect with you there. We appreciate the time for you joining us today. Thanks everyone for participating as well. I want to wish you all the best in your endeavors, Paul and Kirsten. I do want to remind folks that as mentioned, we did record this, so we will make it available on our YouTube channel. And we will also make sure that we communicate to those that participated an opportunity where we will get the PowerPoint deck to you as well and make sure that you have full connections with Paul and Kirsten. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thanks so much for joining us for Business Smarts. We look forward to seeing you in September. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining us.